program accepts full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome, K-Man, to another episode of Straight Talk, proudly brought to you by Bobo 103.1 FM. We're your hosts, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome to Straight Talk. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I am not bad today, Mr. Solomon. Regrettably, still waiting on this expected rain to fall on my way over here as I pass, what is it, Denham-Thompson Way, I think it is. I thought I saw some drip drops on the windshield, but though it probably could have just been the car in front of me washing their windshield.
That happens, right?
Yeah, so I think it was a fake to me. I do see the clouds looking, hinting, maybe suggesting we might see some rain tonight, but still haven't seen any rain during the day today, at least in the capital.
I don't know. We're going to have to put some sprinklers or something together to make you happy, Austin.
I think you might have to. I think you might just...
we just can't tolerate seeing you in this sort of condition.
Well, think about the alternative. If it's not raining, then it is kind of sweltering outside, yeah? It's a little warm.
I tell you what, it's one extreme or the other around here.
Well, I have a friend. She's English, and she's relatively new to the island. And this morning, I ran into her, and her comments were, "What another beautiful day in paradise." And I said, "You think so? It's kind of warm." And her response was, "Well, that's just fine with me. It can stay warm." And again, she comes from England, so let's face it. You know, to say a beautiful day in paradise is probably applicable in UK weather maybe 5 days out of the entire year. So, it is definitely a step up.
Either way, I'm sure it's a position where she can really appreciate it.
No, well, absolutely. She was all bouncy and thrilled, albeit it was 8 o'clock, 8-ish in the morning. So the true afternoon sun had yet to reveal itself. But she certainly gave the indication that warm is a good thing.
No, absolutely. You know what that reminds me of?
More power to them.
It reminds me of when I was a much younger man and saw snow for the first time. Everyone's, huddling inside, and I'm outside.
Yeah.
Holding up my arms, trying to catch snowflakes.
Beautiful, isn't it?
And I could see the security guard. This was in Boston, right?
Right.
So I could see the security guard looking at me like, all right, going to have to keep an eye on this guy.
Yes.
Acting kind of weird, right?
Yes.
And then as I walked in, I said, "I saw you looking at me all weird, but let me ask you, if I could send you into the tropics, Cayman Islands with that white, beautiful sand, what would you do?" He said, "Probably run my toes through it." I said, "Exactly.
Right.
This is my first time seeing the snow, so
Indeed.
Don't worry if I'm running my fingers through it."
So forgive me if I happen to enjoy this just a tad. Well, certainly, I love snow, obviously. I love the colder weather. It's fantastic.
I know, Austin.
Though snow in the country is entirely a different experience to snow in the city. In the country, it is the proverbial, white blanket of lovely snowfall as it drops. It almost looks beautiful as it tops the trees. In the cities, of course...
It's like that for a very short period of time.
And it's like that. Well, it depends on obviously how hot the sun is, what time of year is, and how cold it is outside, of course. But in the city, regardless of, all of those factors, obviously the goal, number one, is to push whatever snow that's in the streets out of the way. So what you end up with is something called slush, which is, of course, the result of melting snow from the salt crystals that are used to melt the snow. That, and of course, let's face it, most city streets aren't exactly the cleanest places in the world.
Yeah.
So that becomes kind of dirty, cold-looking mud.
A real gray very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not an enjoyable experience in cities, though many, many, many moons ago, I had the, I suppose, good fortune to work in Montreal. And that's when I discovered...
I hear trees break over there.
I'll tell you what, a whole lot of things break over there when wintertime rolls in, and it tends to, almost feel like it's winter all year round.
Mm-hmm.
But it was at that point in time that I gained an appreciation for country snow versus city snow. And with city snow, there was also, I forget what they called it, but, most people, they work in Montreal is a metropolitan, if not corporate city. So most people walk around, obviously, with their leather wingtip shoes, much as you would expect from the corporate banking sector in Cayman. Leather shoes, proper shoes. But there is, I don't even know what to call it. There's a cover.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like those slippers you put on when you go to the hospital? You see the doctors wearing them over their shoes, so they stay hygienic or
supposedly,
whatever. Well, again, in city snow and city weather, and cities around the world, not just Montreal, but they have sort of a rubber slip-on that goes over your otherwise nice leather shoes, supposedly to protect your expensive leather shoes from, deteriorating as a result of the snow and the salt. But it was an entirely different
I didn't know that.
experience. Yeah, well,
I don't think I saw that.
There you go. So the things that people do to survive the brutal winter in other parts of the world where they do get the pleasure of snow.
I just keep saying, like you talk about certain parts of Canada, I just keep saying, listen, man, I don't think humans were meant to be here. This is not normal.
Yeah, they have some cold parts of Canada. I think in places like New Brunswick, the further north you go, and it's incredibly frigid temperatures. I think like 30 below, and that's sort of a norm. Like, my God, do you realize what you're saying? It's colder outside than inside most freezers in people's homes.
Yeah, I know.
So there you have it.
So we can forgive them when we see them, running around half naked and just standing there in the sun.
Well, again, if I can quote my English friend, another beautiful day in paradise. Let's take a quick look at what we can expect outside with your weather compliments of the Cayman Islands National Weather Service, shall we? Residual moisture lingering across the Northwest Caribbean is expected to continue to support an increased chance for some showers throughout the day, and in particular, looking forward to tomorrow on Friday afternoon. Gentle winds and seas are expected to prevail through the next 24 hours, while Doppler radar images show few showers in and around the Cayman area.
Setting you up for the weekend,
They
Austin.
clearly are. Nice, gentle breeze, but potentially a nice rain shower on Friday, though I'm a little skeptical to sort of, look forward to it, because all this week we've been talking rain, again, trusting the island's weather service, but haven't really seen it actually follow through. But hey, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt.
I've heard of shell shock, but you're kind of like weather shocked. I'm afraid to plan now.
I am.
I never knew my
father. However, rain or no rain, and again, I just want to add that rain tends to cool the place down. The cooler it is, the less likely for tropical cyclones to form. So kind of like the desert Saharan dust, rain is
a good thing.
Rain is a good thing.
Help Austin pray for rain.
Help us all pray for rain. Keeps hurricanes away from us. Tonight, partly cloudy skies as you forecast, with a 40% chance of late night showers and thunder expected. Temperatures will fall to the low 80s. Winds will be out of the northeast at 5 to 10 knots, and seas will be slight with wave heights of 1 to 3 feet. Tomorrow, your Friday, will begin with partly cloudy skies and a 30% chance of morning showers along with some possible thunder. Temperatures will rise to the low 90s with a heat index of near 106 degrees. Again, that 106 degrees heat index does not bode well for rain, so I wouldn't be looking out for it. But hey, it's the tropics, so it can, in fact, surprise us. We'll just have to wait and see. Winds, again, will be out of the east at 5 to 10 knots. Seas will be slight with wave heights of 1 to 3 feet. The outlook, there it is again, is for a Saharan dust plume
Cut and paste.
to spread across the way. I know.
Cut and paste.
You're starting to say, is this deja vu? Is
Groundhog
expected
Day.
to spread across the Western Caribbean from Saturday morning, and with it will bring generally settled and hazy conditions. No promises of rain. Should be quiet.
Good day to work.
Good day to work. Good day to go to the beach. Hopefully the waves will stay calm, and as they were this past weekend, flat seas, crystal clear waters, nice and cool, if not chilly, depending on how early you go. I would highly recommend an early morning swim. Though when I think about it, no, you better go mid-morning. Yeah, mid-morning is best. That way it'll be quiet when I go, and perfect. Don't want to recommend anyone to interrupt my otherwise valuable quiet time
That special
mineral
dip.
You
That
know
special dip.
it. You know it.
Did you tell everyone where you're dipping? You didn't make that error, did you?
No.
Oh, okay,
no,
great.
no.
I mean, save all of us.
No. Just save all of us. Quite right. You don't need that vision, really.
Somebody just getting up early, going to the beach, enjoying himself. What must I see?
What is that? Is that? Oh my God! There should be a law.
There's something floating there. There's a big log floating on the
There
ocean.
is a big log floating in the water. No, it's not that bad.
Hey.
I'm kid friendly when I swim.
There's a sort of synonym there, Austin.
There probably is.
Dig a little deeper.
I'm trying hard not to, buddy. I'm trying to keep it.
Big log
PG
floating on the
or
ocean.
PG. Stop it. Stop it. That's why I left it alone and said it very
I'm
quietly.
just working with you.
Leave it alone, Ellio. Leave it alone.
All right.
745-2626 is the number here in studios as we, again, enjoy a relatively quiet, short week here in the Cayman Islands and certainly on the program. Really just enjoying great conversation with my colleague on a number of issues, as always, plucking from the headlines.
You
And
definitely enjoy each other's company.
we certainly do, and thank God.
The conversation isn't bad either.
Conversation is fantastic, and that's what happens when we have these private discussions, just you and
I was there
The
thinking-
thoughts just tend to roll.
I was there thinking as you talked about your English friend.
Yes.
Now, there's always using those two words interchangeably, the English, the British. We need to look that up. You know exactly which one is it. I mean, have you ever thought of that? Come on.
You know what?
I'm going to search that up.
You do that. You do that. The English
learn
or the
something new.
British.
Yeah, what is it?
I don't know.
I'm sure it has to be a difference, right?
Perhaps, I guess.
Like one might be more of a political thing versus a sort of, I don't know, let's check it out.
Check it out. Indeed. For me, it's absolutely apolitical when I refer to friends.
Maybe that's where you're using English.
Perhaps that's where I'm using English. Though the country is called England, and they have their own flag separate from the UK British flag, if you will, the Union Jack, I think it's called. But yeah, the English flag is kind of cool, white with a red cross. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, the St. George.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. To match the
They didn't realize that the Union Jack that we have is kind of like for the colonized.
for the colonized. Though speaking of the Union Jack, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but not last weekend, but the weekend for the King's birthday. You remember when they had all the parades and the hoopla? Right in front of the government administration building, of course, the dignitaries, the politicians, I even think the judiciary came out, and it was all pomp and prestige. But I saw these images from the local media, and they took a picture of the flag. Somebody on that day flew the Union Jack upside down.
Oh, yeah?
So it was a signal of distress.
Yeah.
There was an emergency being sent out
Unintended, of course.
subliminally, whilst everyone was enjoying reveling. It just so happened. I think it was the compass. If you look at it, and you have a copy, or you can go online and do
All
a
right.
search, King's birthday celebrated in the Cayman
So
Islands. and
straight talk
see if you can find the images.
for those who love to think,
Yes,
not gossip,
not gossip.
talk nonsense.
Absolutely.
Either way, British refers to someone
Troublemakers.
from the United Kingdom, UK. The UK is made up of 4 countries: England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. So someone from any of these 4 places is British.
British.
And English refers specifically to someone from England, not Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. It is ethnic and national identity tied to England alone.
I see. So
Example, a person from Manchester is both English from England and British from the UK.
right.
A person from Glasgow is Scottish and British, not English.
Right.
Yeah?
Someone from Dublin is Irish and British.
And British. Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. So, well, you
in
can't
that
say we
case-
didn't learn something.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm glad that I used the right nomenclature.
So your friend is in the right category?
My friend is
You
in
didn't
the
slip
right-
it out?
I
You
did
didn't put
not.
her in a hole that she shouldn't be in?
I did not.
Okay,
I
great.
want to say she's from the London area.
Okay.
But again, don't quote me. You don't, go around saying, what part of England are you from?
Exactly where are you from?
I can't quite recognize that accent.
Yeah.
Is that Cockney or is it something else? I can't tell. I really don't know. And Cockney is the only one that, springs to mind. But there are, interestingly enough, a number of different
What if
dialects.
she embarrasses you by calling this program now, Austin, and saying, by the way, Austin, I'm actually British?
well, that would be very, very embarrassing. And
I hope she doesn't do that to you.
I hope she doesn't, because then she will become my ex-friend.
My ex-British friend.
My ex-British friend. That's what I get for having a British friend.
All right, so she's English.
Yeah, she's English, indeed. As I was saying, short week, great conversations here on Straight Talk, talking about the issues, as my colleague says, issues that make you think, issues that make you go, well, I see what the headline is saying, but what does it really mean? That's what we're about. Other shows talk about personalities and people, deal with speculation and rumor and innuendo. And if that's your thing, then by all means,
Go for it.
Go for it. Knock yourself out, as I like to say. But I really enjoy the conversations we have here on this program, not just because we're having it, but, when we listen to the feedback from the listening audience, they like it, and again, it doesn't mean you have to call in, because at the end of the day, the lack of callers does not necessarily indicate listeners. Persons are tuned in and just enjoying the conversation without the need to call in, because, well, everything that needs to be said or asked is being asked.
It's talk porn, Austin. Everybody's participating, but apparently it's a $1 billion industry. No one's involved.
No one's involved, indeed. It's a group thing.
Yeah.
It's a group thing.
Yeah.
Well, we try to start off the show with some positive news, and in the headlines
positive news
today, we haven't quoted from the Caymanian Times in a long time, at least a few weeks, and arguably, it's, I guess, because news media is news media. It's kind of tough to criticize one media house for not having a story, or for having the same story that three others do. I mean, really, at the end of the day,
it is good. I mean, we should quote from the Cayman Times more often.
Well, certainly, whenever there are stories that jump off the page, and there are many, but I just acknowledge there's been a couple of weeks since I've not read it, but it's been a couple of weeks since we've used headlines from that publication. But I'm happy to say that we're correcting that wrong this evening.
Yeah.
There's a headline in the latest version of the Caymanian Times, says Cayman records robust 2024 economic performance. Now, again, I think the headline's a little bit misleading personally, but you tell me whether or not you think I'm right or whether I'm wrong.
Okay.
I think just listening and reading.
I got my thinking cap on.
When I read the statistics, it represents a bit of a mixed bag. It's robust, but there's some warning signs, and
I like the way you said that. It's a bit of a mixed bag.
It's a bit of a mixed bag. It's not necessarily all.
Not that you're trying to prejudice.
Sunshine and roses.
Not that you're trying to prejudice the listener, the guy who's supposed to be thinking about this.
No, which is why I say, in my opinion, when I read this article,
Right.
I found it to be a bit of a mixed bag, but I encourage you to listen to the facts and then tell me whether you think, well, it is robust, and maybe I don't share your otherwise pessimistic economic outlook, Mr. Harris. Or you might say, Austin, as usual,
You're right.
bang on, accurate.
You're spot on, buddy.
You're spot on, mate. Anyway, so here's a few snippets. Cayman's economy expanded by an estimated 3.3% in the first 9 months of 2024, according to the new economic performance report published by the Economic and Statistics Office. Electricity and water supply is estimated to have expanded by 5.4%, while health and social work and government services grew by 5.1% and 4%, respectively. The construction sector expanded by an estimated 3%, while wholesale and retail trade rose by 3.7%. Finance and insurance services, which continue to be the largest contributor to GDP, expanded by 2.7% during the same review period. The rise in output for the period was primarily linked to robust demand for services. Notable expansions in economic activity were estimated in business services and real estate activities, which rose 3.7 and 3.5%, respectively. Now, if I just stick there for a second with real estate, the fact that we're seeing a robust growth in real estate does not necessarily mean the prices are going anywhere but up. and therefore the affordability factor for the average person, again, we still
Might be a little further out of reach.
might be a little further out of reach indeed. And again, when you consider the arbitrary way in which real estate prices are set in the Cayman Islands, they're determined by what, the last person paid for X property. So if they paid a high price, then arguably property values are going up. And therefore, if you're a consumer or perhaps a, first-time home starter, it might not be a good time to buy a home. But then again, when in the Cayman Islands is. So we just leave that there. The strong performance of the economy in the first 3 quarters of the year has led to an upward revision of the calendar year forecast. Economic activity in the islands was projected at 3.1% for 2024, with demand for auxiliary services expected to remain strong. The ESO says the robust economic activity and a narrowing of the gap between the demand and supply of labor have resulted in unemployment remaining close to its natural levels. Well, we talked about that also yesterday, unemployment dropping by almost a full percent to 0.9%, but a decline in unemployment is always very good. Obviously, the overall unemployment sitting at 2.4%, largely the overall economy, but the unemployment amongst Caymanians is still relatively high at just above 8%. So we can do better, but really in terms of the overall scheme of things, the economy and those who want to work or willing to work, for the most part, are getting it. Again, we discount the fact that every year, things like the high school and university, they graduate students, those persons are seeking work. But as we discovered in yesterday's conversation in terms of the job postings that are being put out by work, employers are largely looking for experienced workers versus persons perhaps just entering the market with no experience. And that may be one of the contributing factors to why Caymanian unemployment continues to be relatively high. But again, mixed bag. The 2024 third quarter economic data also showed that the central government recorded an overall surplus of $97.8 million in the first 3 quarters of last year. This resulted from revenue of $914 million and expenditure of $816.1 million. So I can just hear the opposition member, a particular one opposition member, say, "See, surplus. I don't hear deficit anywhere in there," as the preview suggested.
I told you.
I will just say, to quell your excitement, the preview referred to deficits only in 2025 and 2026. It said nothing about 2024. I hate to burst your bubble.
End of December.
But I know you were getting excited. I could feel you through the, through the radio vibes. I feel your excitement.
He's sitting there going, "What are you talking about?"
Who are you talking about? However, the central government's outstanding debt, and this is the number we really need to pay attention to, the debt decreased to $421 million as of September, compared to $469 million recorded in the previous year, September 2023. So that's a good thing. But again, the economic outlook for 2025, maybe not so rosy. That may be changing. Obviously, these numbers change all the time. The forecast, according to the preview, is that it's going to be in deficit. We hear from the Honorable Minister of Finance talking in Parliament just the other day that, the government, particularly the cabinet, are looking at tightening their belts as they work towards building a budget, which they hope to present sometime November-ish. And there is still the anticipation, though I suppose with the budget not being introduced until early November, the government really will be hard-pressed to spend a significant amount of its spending before their year end at 31st December. And therefore, that would suggest the expectation of the financial secretary, who quoted again just before the elections, that he thought the incoming government would find themselves hard-pressed to get through 2025 without any new borrowing. In this case, the delay in presenting the budget might actually work in their favor to reduce new borrowing to only take place in 2026 as opposed to 2025. Obviously, that new borrowing will have an impact on the overall debt level. But if we can skip a year, that too, I think, is a positive notion. Tourism. This should come as no surprise to anyone, but I'm glad it was included in the statistics. Providing more detail on how specific sectors performed at the end of the third quarter last year, the ESO shows total visitor arrivals declined to 1.1 million for the first 3 quarters of 2024. This reduction was attributed to a decline in cruise arrivals, while stayover arrivals increased during the same period. Stayover arrivals increased by 2.3% to 330,000 in the review period. Excuse me, while cruise arrivals declined by a whopping 15.4% to the same 792,000 that we have been talking. And arguably, this number is going to also get worse progressively as the year 2025 continues, but arguably even further into that. The reduction in cruise arrivals occurred as the number of cruise ship calls to Cayman's port fell by 58 to 241. So we have 58 less ships calling on the Cayman Islands for the year 2024. Again, we see from the numbers and the schedules that trend is going to continue.
Going to be further declines again by 2027.
Yeah, exactly. So we can expect these numbers to fall. Obviously, the big challenge for the incoming Minister of Tourism will be keeping the stayover numbers high whilst they see a decline in the cruise numbers. But it is going to have an impact, and we have been warning about it.
I will say one thing. One of the things that same member that you talked about that's listening, he's probably saying, could you not make them steal the tourism numbers? That had something to do with me.
Yes. Well, if he's got his ears on, by all means, the phone lines are yours to call up.
You just didn't come in. He found those numbers, right?
That's right. 59 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock is the time we have to pause, take a short commercial break. But don't go anywhere. There'll be more Straight Talk coming up next.
Bobo.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has said he's had positive dialogue with President Trump about providing Patriot air defence systems. He said he's requesting 10 and has secured European funding for 3. Sarah Rainsford reports from Italy.
Volodymyr Zelensky has long been calling for more Patriot air defence systems to protect Ukraine's cities. Ukraine's president was speaking at a big conference here in Rome to discuss his country's recovery and reconstruction after the war, although efforts to negotiate an end to Russia's invasion have stalled. Instead, Ukraine is under heavier drone and missile attack than ever, with Moscow offering no concessions. Mr. Zelensky called the latest deadly strikes pure terror. He warned that Vladimir Putin was in this war for the long haul and could only be stopped by a show of strength from Ukraine's allies and increased sanctions.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he's ready to negotiate a permanent end to the war in Gaza once a 60-day ceasefire is agreed. But he said the minimum conditions would include the disarmament of Hamas and the demilitarization of Gaza. Tom Bateman is in Washington.
Mr. Netanyahu is leaving Washington with much public praise from President Trump, but without delivering the breakthrough the White House wanted. Hamas demands a US-backed guarantee from the Israelis that they won't use the proposed 60-day ceasefire to get hostages freed, but then restart the war. Mr. Netanyahu has said he will commit to a permanent truce, but only if Hamas disarms. That may be a condition he knows the group won't sign up to. There are other intractable issues also paralysing the indirect talks in Doha over the control of the food supply and Israeli troop withdrawals.
Meanwhile, the United Nations says it's delivered the first fuel consignment to Gaza in 4 months, but warns it falls short of even a single day's demand. It said the 75,000 litres it managed to bring in from Israel were far below the hundreds of thousands of litres needed daily to meet Gaza's humanitarian needs. The leaders of Britain and France have agreed a pilot scheme to return to France some of the migrants who crossed the Channel in small boats. In exchange for every migrant returned, Britain will take in an asylum seeker who has not tried to enter the country illegally. Peter Walsh from the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford said large numbers of people would need to be returned in order for it to be an effective deterrent.
People have travelled thousands of miles to get to Calais. They've spent thousands of euros. They're willing to risk their lives by getting in a small boat to reach the UK. If there's only a small probability of being returned to France, then there's every probability that migrants will just view this as one more additional risk that's worth taking.
Peter Walsh from the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford. BBC News. Two of Brazil's biggest companies say they're studying the implications of President Trump's latest threatened sanctions. Though the 50% tariffs have been dismissed by some analysts as noise, both the oil giant Petrobras and the plane manufacturer Embraer face possibly significant hurdles to one of their biggest markets. An advisor to the Brazilian president, Celo Amorim, told the BBC he was alarmed by the import taxes and a letter sent by Mr. Trump to President Lula citing the treatment of the former President Jair Bolsonaro as a trigger for the tariffs.
I myself, as a diplomat, felt shocked because I never saw a letter between two presidents written in those terms. Above all, we were shocked by the interference in a sovereign country. Brazil is a sovereign country. We're very good friends of the United States of America. We have 200 years of excellent relations. The United States has actually a surplus in trade with us.
A Roman Catholic bishop in the United States has told parishioners they're not obliged to attend Mass each week if they fear arrest and deportation. Bishop Alberto Rojas said many among the large Latino population of his San Bernardino diocese were wary of immigration and customs enforcement. A rights group in Bangladesh has accused the government of overlooking more than 2,000 violent crimes against religious minorities over the past year. The Hindu-Buddhist-Christian Unity Council said most of the alleged incidents happened last August, immediately after the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was ousted after weeks of unrest. Italian police have arrested a farmer accused of siphoning water from an aqueduct feeding the fountains and landscaped gardens of a former royal palace near Naples. Staff at the 18th century royal palace of Caserta had complained of water shortages. Police alleged the suspect rigged up pipe nearly 150 metres long to tap the aqueduct. That's the latest. BBC News.
Views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk right here on your favorite Bobo 103.1 FM radio dial and simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook with the key search word Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism page, also streaming live there for your convenience. We're your host in studios, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, and the phone lines are open on this Thursday, the 10th of July. The number to call, 745-2626 is the number in studios. Or if talking isn't your thing, you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number by dialing 928-2562. And you can use that number whether you're WhatsApping or whether you're just texting. Both will do the trick. But through WhatsApp, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. Ellio, we do have a caller on the line. Let's see if we can take that call now. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, is that Austin?
This is.
It's Maisie from work, and I'm from Yorkshire. I'm not from bloody London. It's an insult.
You know, Ellio said, I wonder if your English friend will actually call up today, and will she consider herself English or British? So which is it, Maisie, now that you've gone and told the world who you are?
I'm from Yorkshire, so I'm a Yorkshire woman. And we only use British and English around the world, but if you're going to ask me directly, I'm from Yorkshire, so it's Yorkshire woman.
Yorkshire woman. All right. Well,
I'm from the northeast.
The northeast. Well, I'm glad you were tuned in, and I'm glad you got to see that, yes, I was sort of talking about you.
I was very flattered, Austin. I don't normally listen to the radio at this time, and I just happened to be bringing my dog back from the vet, and we were both there, and he was even thinking, I think this is you. So.
Yeah. Well, he was saying all good things, so don't worry about it.
It was.
I don't worry, I heard.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this call might have taken on an entirely different tone.
Definitely.
Insulting you only by a little by referring that you might be from London. That wasn't personal. That was a guess.
No,
that was a real guess on my part. I apologize.
Do not worry about it. It happens absolutely everywhere.
All right. Well,
thanks for calling the program.
No, thank you, guys. Take care now. Bye.
Okay, bye, Maisie. Have a great evening. Certainly do appreciate it. Well, there you go. So there you have it.
See why you were talking about your friend, Mr. Harris?
I tell you what, that's why one has to be careful. You talk about friends. You never know who is listening.
So, I mean, you and I can't even sit in here and have a private conversation, it appears.
You know, exactly.
Because everybody's listening.
We're just chatting, Ellio and I. I mean, we thought it was private. Didn't realize anyone had their ears on. But a big shout out to Maisie. She's what I would call a good egg. She's good people.
A good egg.
A good egg. I don't know who coined that phrase. I think that's a Canadian phrase, actually. Don't ask me where it came from.
Or what it means.
You know? Well, I mean, eggs. You got eggs that are shaped just right, and then you've got the perhaps, obscured, not quite round, not quite oval.
I've never seen an egg like that.
Anyway, she's a good egg. She's good people, and I'm glad to count her as one of my friends.
Speaking about eggs, yes. I know that there's supposedly, when we say that dominoes playing or football playing, like, one love. Take that love.
Take that love.
Right.
Love is a good thing.
So apparently it comes from the French word louf.
Louf. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's supposed to mean zero or something.
I'm sure the yard man that created the beautiful game of dominoes were thinking, we really are French in nature in their best patois.
Speaking about Jamaicans, there's the Irish thing in Jamaica. So, I remember watching the movie. I don't remember the title. There's another expert for that. But I was watching the movie and then I turned my back. And I know, okay, let me rewind. I'm watching the movie and there's Irish people talking.
Right.
So it's fine. I'm listening. It's no problem. And then for some reason, I turned my back. And while I'm turning my back, I'm like, why does it sound like the channel changed? I'm hearing Jamaicans there. And that's the first time I realized there's a little bit of an overlap. You can hear in some of the accents from the Jamaicans, you can hear the Irish in there.
Right.
Believe it or not. Yeah. I'm going to try to remember what that movie is or get my expert.
All right. All right.
Responsible for home affairs.
Yeah.
Get them to tell me exactly what it is.
I'm still chuckling on the inside that Maisie actually picked up the phone to call because I never actually expected to hear from her.
You see?
But I will say to her this. She says, normally she wouldn't be listening because she's not on the road this time of evening. Mm-hmm. But I would highly encourage you, Maisie, if you got your ears on, you might want to tune us in just
every day.
Every day. Believe me,
and
I would not steer you wrong. It'll be an interesting conversation. Oh, by the way, her dog, this is why
Austin?
Take a wild guess what her dog's name is. Just take a wild guess.
Austin, I'm not your lawyer, but I just want to caution you.
No, there's no caution here.
Okay, go ahead.
Take a wild guess what her dog's name is.
Let me see.
I never knew my father.
Are you serious?
Yes. That is why it just sort of, jumped out of the
page.
What
was his name again, Tatey?
Bruce.
Bruce,
the great white shark from Finding Nemo. Bruce is also Maisie's little dog's name. Beautiful little dog. Don't ask me what breed it is, but Key. I made the mistake of calling her a she, or calling him a she the first time I met him. But lovely little dog. And, of course, he is the love of Maisie's life, her four-legged friend. So, again, thank you, Maisie, for hearing your voice. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for tuning in. I hope we've created a new habit for you. So, going back to the economic outlook, which, again, according to the Caymanian Times, called it robust for 2024 and going forward, we move to construction. Now, construction statistics, you know, at face value, one would say it's a little confusing. Now, yesterday we talked about the number of job postings included for the month of June for workforce opportunities in Residency Cayman, a.k.a. work. But according to the ESO, construction indicators declined for the first quarter of 2024. Now, some of you who might have remembered what I said at the last segment, but didn't you just say at the very beginning that construction was up? I did say that. At the very beginning, construction sectors expanded by 3%, but that apparently, according to the ESO, is just in terms of volume of number of projects. But the building permits and the value of projects approved actually contracted in value in the last year. The value of building permits fell for the second consecutive 9-month period, falling by just under 21% to 20.9%, or 468.1 million. The decline was seen across all categories with the exception, again, you can probably guess this one, with the exception of new houses being built and new hotels being built. In both of those sectors, obviously the numbers are still high, and so too are the relevant prices connected to each. The total value of projected approvals contracted by 367.4 million, representing a 25% decrease compared to the same period in 2023. So whilst it may look like construction is booming, the value of some of those projects have in fact decreased in value. So we're not necessarily banking as much as we were in previous years. But construction, as you know, is cyclical. You know, the peaks and valleys, and I'm sure it won't be a matter of time at all before it bounces right back up. The one that everybody's been waiting for, the one that really matters to consumers, inflation and CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. Also, as we've been talking about yesterday, the first quarter inflation rate for 2025 stood at 1.8%. This represents a slight increase by 0.1% from 2024, when it was recorded at 1.7%, which is what lends the feeling to most consumers. I really haven't noticed a change. Well, you probably wouldn't. There hasn't been a change, just the slightest change. However, the first quarter of 2025 and the fourth quarter of 2024 indicated, interestingly enough, that consumer prices declined by a whole percentage point, by 1%, led by the reduction in transportation, clothing, and footwear. So if you bought new clothes or new shoes in the last year, you probably spent a little less for that. And reduction in transportation costs, again, I haven't seen, well, yeah, I suppose in terms of gas prices where they have been, they perhaps may have declined in the last year. They have been a lot higher. I was actually worried about, Trump's bombing of Syria. Again, another war in the Middle East does not bode well for fuel prices. Luckily, though, the fuel that is produced in that part of the world actually is sold to Asian markets. So therefore, our part of the world would have been less impacted. But really, OPEC doesn't need much encouragement to either reduce supply at any point in time. So I'm grateful that fuel prices have remained where they are, but reduction in transportation costs. It doesn't stipulate what areas of transportation costs, but I'm assuming here they're referring to fuel costs led to transportation, but there might be other indicators. So that is why I say it's a bit of a mixed bag. Tourism, not as great as it could be. I forgot financial services. How did I forget that? Financial services indicators for the first 9 months of 2024 were generally mixed, with 4 of the 8 indicators increasing and 3 declining. The one that matters most, I guess, to you and me and consumers is the prime lending rate. Now, the prime lending rate for Cayman fell by 25 basis points to 8% for the review period. Now, why is that important? The fact that prime lending rate in Cayman fell should come as no surprise, because in 2024, you will recall the Federal Reserve in continental U.S. reduced lending rates for three consecutive times in 2024. The downside, though, is that whilst prime lending in the U.S., I want to say as of December, was anywhere from 4.25% to 4.5%. In Cayman, the prime lending rate is almost double that. So it's still more expensive to borrow in Cayman than it is
ask
anywhere
anyone
else.
if they've seen a decrease in their mortgage.
But quite right. That's, I think, really fundamentally at the end of the day, that is the large question. And well, I haven't. I don't know if you have.
No.
And certainly, again, when we look at the prime lending rate, so prime lending is 8%. None of us are getting 8% on our mortgages. We're getting maybe 8 prime plus 3 or 4. So they're probably, in the 11, 12% market. But again, it is notable. They say when America sneezes, Cayman catches a cold. People sometimes argue that whilst the fuel prices drop, consecutively across the U.S. at the pumps, that does not always necessarily, trickle down to Cayman. The lending rates are a prime example. The reduction in lending rates took a while before they started to drop, arguably waited until the end of the year before we saw any kind of decline as indicated by the ESO, whilst on the Federal Reserve side, the U.S. side, the U.S. dropped rates 3 consecutive months in the course of 2024. That's, separate quarters to the point where I don't know if it's the lowest it's ever been, but certainly it is lower than we see. Now
here's a question.
Is still expensive.
Here's a question as you dig through all this Cayman Times and all kinds of dog stuff going on. There's all kinds of things going on. And sorry, I couldn't resist, Bruce.
I know Bruce. Bruce is a lovely dog.
Good so let's address this, because this kind of goes on to one of our topics. If the lending rate in the United States, let's just toy with a number, it's 2.5%. Then immediately in Cayman, the banks are adding 4% to that, which means you're paying 6.5% versus 2.5% you would get it in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, earlier on, several days ago, I talked about cost of living, and I talked about the fact that the rent, the mortgages, this is a major player. But of course, I was being told in reference by someone on the calling in or whatever, they made specific reference to the electrical.
Yeah.
And again, you see, it shows you how stealthy, how hidden, how insidious the mortgage and stuff is. People aren't even seeing it anymore.
Yes. Good point.
You're not even seeing it anymore. That's how accustomed you have become to it. That's how much the frog has been sitting in the water so long.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't even realize, the biggest bill I'm paying is my rent.
Yeah.
But let's just work with it. How is it? Why are we getting an additional 4%? Why are you paying 6.5% as opposed to the 2.5%? Why? Because you're on an island. You got to ship something in, and the bank needs to get what is the reason for that? You see, again, and this is where you get the cartel that no government does anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're not doing anything about that, and you're never going to get anything about that, because as long as a politician can take a nice, simple, easy road, as regardless of how tough they make it sound, the easy road of upping minimum wage, you're not going to get it. But I can tell you right now, the banks charge the highest interest rates possible, and they want to take the least risk possible. Mm-hmm. In the United States, if you get a mortgage, I was chatting with at least one friend of mine. I didn't have one, but Ellio, I didn't have to have a life insurance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My wife didn't have to have a life insurance. I didn't have to insure my dog either.
Right.
They have equity in the home. I mean, let's just understand, the bank owns your home.
Yes.
You don't.
The home and the land that it sits on.
They own it. You don't.
Yep.
You're just staying in there.
That's right.
And paying rent.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is where they want to carry us with property tax, so we can rent that for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. But you don't own your home. They own it. But while they own it, and they have the right to take it away at any point in time, or should I say, take full ownership of it, show you that they own it, you just got to call today. Got to make a call today and say, by the way, I'm calling in the mortgage.
Yeah.
You don't pay me tomorrow, I come and I take it because I'm ready to leave the island. So they own it. But at the end of the day, they say, Mr. Harris, I know I own this property, but you need to insure it. Yeah, you need to give me some life insurance in case you die, I still want to get my money.
Yep.
And the list goes on. Okay? And all I'm simply saying, with all of these risk mitigation factors that they employ, why am I paying not double, not even triple, more than triple the percentage rate that I'm going to be paying in the United States? Why?
Yes. Why is it very good?
And this is all I'm saying to all the good folks who are so pro behind minimum wage. I would like to see you deal with that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you go and you can't get a decent apartment to rent, and you can't get a little place because you wanted to start a small business and sell donuts, but now you need to balance your BE, your break-even point, to pay $10,000 a month in rent. Well, this is part of the reason.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it has become so stealthy, so insidious that people aren't even seeing it anymore. They're focusing on CUC.
Right.
CUC is a problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but my friend, it's nothing compared to your rent or to your mortgage.
Indeed.
All right?
Well, in your response, pal of mine, you touched on two areas that arguably I wanted to take us today. The first was CUC, largely generated from comments coming into the program from members of the listening audience. And the other one, of course, came from the headlines, and I was a bit reluctant to raise it because I know how passionately and strong you feel on the subject, but you touched on it nonetheless. So we will talk about it because it is in the headlines, and that is, of course, your least favorite subject, minimum wage. That finds itself in the headlines, particularly from the backdrop of a press conference hosted by the Minister of Caymanian Employment, the Honorable Michael Miles, and now being front and center after initially viewing the Minimum Wage Advisory Committee report as a book and unable to make a firm decision as to which way he was leaning or he and the government were leaning. He now has come out and said that, he's fully supportive of minimum wage, and there's a number of glittering generalities.
He's very gung-ho about it now.
Extremely gung-ho about it.
He's read the book, apparently.
He has. But I want to, as always, focus on the comments emanating from the listening audience because, as we always say, our listeners are our single largest and favorite commodity. And this one's for Maisie, if you're still listening. Maisie made her first debut call to the program today, arguably her first day listening to the program, and immediately she has a fan base of now 2. She's my friend, so I'm the first fan. I guess I'm the president of the fan club. But we have one new fan emanating from the listening audience. A member of the listening audience says, "It was lovely to hear Maisie's beautiful Yorkshire accent. Breath of fresh air. I'm actually headed there next week. However, I heard there's an awful heat wave going on in Yorkshire right now. But for us, it's probably just normal heat. So for us, it's probably just a Thursday. For the UK, wow, it's sweltering. This is unbelievable. Somebody open up a window, please." But apparently it's kind of warm in Yorkshire. But Maisie, if you're still listening, you have a fan, and you made a fan today. So who knows? You call up tomorrow, we can watch that fan base grow.
Yeah. And by the way, Yorkshire
Put
then...
Bruce on the phone.
Yorkshire then would be either English or British.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Either one of those terminals would be fine.
Indeed. Another comment coming from the WhatsApp lines. Obviously, they include the headline that I think we touched on it, not yesterday, it was Tuesday. But it was the headline. Well, they're quoting from Cayman News Service. We quoted at the time from, I believe it was the Cayman Compass, but the articles, were on the same subject. CUC says decrease in power bills is due to investment in their infrastructure, suggesting that consumers can begin to see a reduction in their July bills going forward. And, of course, CUC is attributing that to new infrastructure, new turbines, or things coming online, arguably suggesting the power plant is operating more efficiently and thereby generating the same amount of power for a less amount of energy. That is the gist of it. But we had, I think you will recall, a writer to the program said, my bill hasn't gone down. It's, in fact, increased. Someone was saying they're looking at almost an $1,100 CUC bill for the month. Must be a big house, but obviously they provided the breakdown factors, energy costs and infrastructure costs, and it highlighted the fact that we're paying a solar panel renewable energy fee. So presumably we're paying for CUC solar panels whilst we pay for electricity to power our homes.
So CUC said that our bill is going down in July, and this is because of the investment into new infrastructure.
Yes.
But it didn't specify turbines, right? Am I correct?
Well, let me just open the article, and we'll just open this one. In this case, the listener sent from Cayman News Service, so we'll read from Cayman News Service. Caribbean Utilities Companies has said there has been an overall reduction in its customer bills because of its investment in critical infrastructure. CUC, the monopoly provider in Grand Cayman, has installed a 20-megawatt battery energy storage system and upgraded 4 of its 5 diesel engines over the last 2 years, resulting in reduction in the amount of fuel being burnt and lower bills. So everything I said was accurate. It was both in terms of their turbines or their engines, as well as a battery energy storage system, presumably for the solar panels that they are running, which we are paying for, like we are paying for the light poles. So whatever savings we might generate from renewable energy is being made up in fees to cover the cost for them being there in the first place. You talk about banks operating at no risk.
Well, just so I don't come across too skeptical, at least I lose my soul. You know, first of all, CUC normally increases the bills come summertime, quite conveniently. The formulas always have existed that CUC is able to recoup its investments when it invests in capital, etc. Now, I know that it was changed in slightly variance in terms of the formula in the new contract. 30 seconds?
I apologize. I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah,
I just looked up.
All right. Okay.
Keep going. You got another 20 seconds.
But either way, I mean, it just strikes me as odd. We can touch about it when we come back from the break, but I'm just curious. I hope that the decrease in fee doesn't have anything to do with just rallying some support behind them as they challenge OFREG
Indeed.
to be able to provide renewable energy.
Keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk coming up next right here on Bobo FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
Be prepared. Keep current photos of your pets and make sure their collars have up-to-date contact information. Pet owners in the Cayman Islands should have their pets microchipped. Be informed. Make a plan. Be prepared. For more information, visit caymanprepared.ky.
We all work hard to one day buy the house of our dreams. Why wouldn't you protect it? With Saxon, you now have the option to get a home insurance quote online. Avoid the waiting in lines and the traffic. Simply log on to saxon.ky and click to get a quote to get started. At Saxon, we pride ourselves on providing our customers with excellent customer service and convenience. So what are you waiting for? Visit saxon.ky today from the comfort of your home or office to get your quote and protect the things you love. Saxon. Smart insurance.
Hello, pet parents. We're Cayman Vets, Cayman's most advanced veterinary clinic providing quality care and services. We are committed to being your pet's advocate and friend, offering a lifetime of care. From vaccinations and wellness checks to more advanced surgical procedures, complicated medical concerns, and emergency care on demand. For more information about us or to get in touch, please visit caymanvets.com. Cayman Vets, where compassion meets excellence.
Visit Healthcare Pharmacy's second location in Governor Square, servicing West Bay and the 7 Mile Beach Corridor with a care and professionalism you have come to expect from Healthcare Pharmacy. Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor Square also stocks a huge selection of Hallmark and shoebox greeting cards, vitamins, sunblock, last minute, and everyday needs. To refill and transfer your prescriptions, simply WhatsApp 329-7313 or visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or drop by Monday to Saturday from 9 till 6.
Cayman, Units is here, the island's newest move-in and storage solution. Our robot delivery system allows you to put your unit almost anywhere while providing level loading, uploading, and minimizing shifting. What's even better, no time constraints. Pack at your own pace for moving or store as long as you need. Short-term or long-term, at the home or on the job site. Units, fast, safe, and secure. Check us out at units.ky and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Have
Have your engine driving like never before with Pure 93, the highest pure octane fuel in Cayman and available exclusively at Rubis service stations. Pure 93 protects against engine knock, restores lost power and acceleration, cleans fuel injectors, intake valves, removes engine deposits, improves your fuel economy, and it meets international specification requirements for your car. Fill up with Pure 93 now and keep your engine running like new. Fuel the difference with Pure 93. Available exclusively at Rubis.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. Powered by Health Services Authority. Committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk, proudly brought to you by your favorite radio station, Bobo 103.1
Favorite.
FM, with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, as the conversation continues here in the studios. The phone lines are open at 745-2626 if you're in a talking mood. And if you aren't, well, you can reach out to us via our WhatsApp and text number, 928-2562. And from there, you can either text us, you can WhatsApp text us, or you can send us a WhatsApp audio note, and we will share your comments, questions, and viewpoints live on air. If neither floats your boat, you can also email us at our email address, host@straighttalk.ky. Though I will note, once upon a time, email used to be the go-to preferred method of communication, at least when we have held podcasts in the past. But now people are just using their phones.
Just so you know, when you and I were back in the day that you keep referring to, there was no internet. You just be clear.
Don't say that. It wasn't that bad. When did the internet come online?
There was no internet, Austin.
Really? 2006? You're telling me 2006, 2007, there was no internet?
Well, okay, let me put it this way. Well, internet was around for a long time. It started off for military purposes, but I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like Facebook and YouTube. No.
Okay.
No, it's like, no, it wasn't happening.
All right.
That was back in the day where you had to get in your car. And people weren't getting into their office because they were staying in their cars.
Well, I remember we had the joy of the dial-up modem. I remember that lovely.
Yeah, I used to have. Yeah, I came up with K-Paul. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so back on this issue.
Your word when it comes to IT, buddy. Yes, back on the issue. Prior to my interruption of your viewpoint, which again I swear to you I don't do on purpose.
Don't worry about it.
You know, I have 23 minutes. The floor is yours.
Don't worry, but I just love listening to you. Just read up all the stuff and inform everyone. It's all very informative. Now it's just time to make some exciting noise.
Observations.
So all I'm saying is, Mr. Harris, is that typically CUC increased its bills in the middle of the year at the hottest time of the year.
Yes.
When you and I were sweating.
Yes.
You know, and they knew that we would be going home dying to turn on the AC.
Turn that AC on.
That's when they jacked the bill up on you.
Yep.
I'm sure that was by sheer coincidence. You know, the whole idea of jacking your bill up, say, around November time would have been too much to ask for. But either way, it used to be at one point in time a simple sort of plain formula. It was something to the effect that all the infrastructure that you invest in, you're allowed to recoup that with a 15%.
Right.
You remember that magical number?
Yep.
So I am just saying, I don't want to sound too skeptical, but it's just interesting now that CUC is in court. CUC is also seeing potential competitors on the horizon that wants to possibly come and invest in renewable energy.
Quite right.
And they are now pushing off-reg to say, hey, you know, let us be the ones to invest in 23 megawatts or whatever it is of renewable energy. I am just saying it's a very coincidental that in all of this, at this particular juncture, we're having a decrease in our bills. It's almost as if, you know, if we were dreaming, it would almost as if CUC is lowering the bills just to make everyone happy and to show the prospects of the future. what the future could look like if you come behind CUC and allow us to also monopolize the renewable energy. That's what it strikes me as. That's the first one.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you on most of what you said. However, I will disagree with you on just a factual point.
Okay.
You're talking, obviously, about when you talk about...
the old formula.
Yeah. When you talk about, competition coming into the arena, and obviously you're referring to another headline, the Utility Regulation and Competition Office, better known as OFREG, has recently issued a request for proposals for what will be the country's largest utility-scale solar and battery storage project. Now, interestingly enough, whilst OFREG did deny previous requests from CUC for similar expansion, CUC is in strong support of this initiative by OFREG. So, somewhat contrary to your remark.
Strong support in terms of what?
I'll read it for you.
CUC is now trying to do it.
Which proposed a 100 megawatt of solar storage in its broader 2024 generation plan, voiced strong support for the new solar request for proposal, highlighting that it aligns with its previous recommendation to address Grand Cayman's increasing electricity needs. So what they're saying is the country needs more solar, not less. And whether it's them doing it or this, RFP for competition, they're behind it 100%.
Austin, let me tell you, there's more politicians in this country than the ones that are in parliament, okay?
Yes.
CUC is also the one who has always been in big support for renewable energy. Core program and the list goes on, but nothing's happening. It's one thing to say it, but don't watch my words. Watch at the end of the day what I'm doing. And what CUC wants right now is to actually be the one to buy the renewable energy and to be able to keep their generation monopoly.
Yes.
So that there's now saying, I don't want to buy any more generators. We're trying to save the country. They're all concerned about the environment now. No, it's because potentially someone's going to be able to get a piece of land and put a big, huge solar farm there and now involve themselves in generation of electricity. So now, of course, I support it 100%. In fact, we support it so much, we'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So...
And to your point, there was a time, I mean, let's face it, renewable energies, and particularly solar-powered renewable energy, is relatively new. I mean, I'm not saying it's brand new, but it is relatively new as compared to, say, fossil fuel-driven electricity generation vis-a-vis diesel, for example, which is as old as perhaps, a lot of the marl roads that are running around this country. But if you know the timeline, when solar was first introduced to this country many moons ago, CUC was not a fan for obvious reasons. They didn't support it. They didn't throw their strong support as they're doing today. But what has changed? To your point, CUC is now invested also in renewable energy. So, of course, to your point, they're going to say at face value they're fully behind it. All power to this new plant, which will be the largest in history. But perhaps also to your point, that will simply set a precedent, pave the way, if you will, for CUC, who still plans to introduce a 100-megawatt farm of their own to come on the heels of that, which from a consumer standpoint, you would think would be a good thing, because right now we're less than 3% invested in renewable energies, so far behind the 8 ball in terms of the Cayman Islands energy policy and its ambitions that it's frightening. This new 90.1 megawatt. Sorry, that's a lie. That's not what that one is. This new RFP by OFREG, I'm trying to find the specific generating capacity. Maybe I'll find it. Maybe I won't.
I think it was 23 megawatts or something.
I think you might be right.
But again,
I think you might be right. But I don't want to lose my point.
Yeah, there you go.
Was that, obviously this proposal, this RFP, which will be arguably potentially represent competition to CUC on a generating side, but certainly from a transmission and distribution, they still have to use CUC's lines to get them in the homes. So arguably CUC is still going to make a buck.
Well, CUC will still make a buck on
shows up.
CUC will still make a buck on transmission and distribution, but you don't want to lose the monopoly that you now have in generation. Even though legally they don't have the monopoly, but in substance they have the monopoly because they're the only one technically generating, right?
Yes.
Except for 1 or 2 scattered homes, because there's been no support on that.
Right.
Okay, so
core program leaves a lot.
So
to be desired.
let me use simple numbers so we don't get lost on the all the specifics, right? So here's the deal. You now have a new demand that's going to come for electricity on some buildings, etc., and so they need 10 megawatts more. And CUC is now saying, well, listen, rather than us buying fuel machines, these turbines, we'll invest in renewable energy. But why? Because at the end of the day, there's an RFP, the same thing that we're talking about, saying that somebody could potentially be setting up this solar panel that would feed enough electricity in right now that you almost don't need to invest in a generator.
Yeah.
So here's a golden opportunity that if you jump out and do it, well, no one's going to come and do it because they're going to say, I'm going to put the farm for what? They don't need any more electricity. So it's not going to happen. You'd be killing the opportunity for the person coming into the country. That's my argument on it.
No, absolutely. And to your point, what the off-reg RFP or request for proposals is calling for is a 22.5 megawatt utility scale solar energy. So you were almost right. You said 23. You were just a little bit.
Is a hair off? Happens all the time.
Just a smidge. Just a hair. Now, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst we are excited in many cases that we're seeing a growth in renewable energy, a growth in solar energy, many people have argued that why do we continue to depend on fossil fuel energy generation when we always talk about it? I talk about wanting the rain, but, we have to deal with surfaces of the sun when we should be collecting this and using it for our benefit. There is one drawback, and we need only look at the inter-energy solar farm that already exists in Bodden Town. A utility-scale renewable solar-powered farm is going to require a huge amount of land. We're talking about 150, maybe 200 acres and beyond. So on the one hand, on the energy side, it may bring prices down, but on the other side, we're seeing, again, perhaps destruction of natural habitat. One has to question whether there's going to be EIA, environmental impact assessment. You have to wonder where the eco warriors are going to jump all over this and say, but hang on, throw up a warning sign for a second. Or maybe they take the position that, like the runway expansion, expanding air arrivals and, of course, destroying marine habitat is different than cruise, so that's okay. Likewise, they may argue that reducing our energy bills in this country, albeit at the destruction of hundreds of acres of land, is also okay because the greater purpose is being, served. I don't know, I'm assuming, but I still haven't heard a single eco-activist complain about the runway extension yet.
Who knows the mind of the eco-activists? I have no idea. But I also want to say, I was listening to Minister Miles. This saga continues to get more and more interesting.
The minimum wage subject, yes?
The minimum wage subject.
Fabulous. I don't have to start it. You can.
No, it was interesting. I was listening to the press briefing, and one of the questions being raised is that, this is going to impact the cost of living. This is going to possibly have an impact on even, he talked about moms at home with their helpers, single moms, etc. And Mr. Minister Miles, and unfortunately I don't have the quote here now, but Mr. Miles expressed on one hand very quickly that, he's concerned about that, but he can't let those moms and that suffering, if you like, as I paraphrase, prevent him from protecting at the same time all the people that we have coming here that are working as helpers, etc. And talked about the fact that we are importing poverty. I just find these interesting comments interesting. And the other one was that, what was the other one again? In terms of inflation, he's not worrying about that. The economy is going to do what it's going to do. Now, I really have to I really want to take my time and actually figure out what that sounds like. But I've heard that before, that sort of, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. We're going to do what we have to do. Mm-hmm. And I want to really go back and get the historical context on that to make a good statement one day, very soon. But I just find it amazing that at the end of the day, what you're saying is, I know that this cost of living, this increase from $6 to $8.75 is going to put a lot of Caymanian families out of the works because your helper And I don't care pretty much if you're saying that your helper is now getting paid $1,000 and living in your home and eating for free and the free Wi-Fi. It doesn't matter. It's going to increase to $1,450 to $1,700 plus every month. Not a concern. If people don't understand that going to create an inflationary situation, I don't know what does. You talked earlier on about this piece of land and the fact that we've seen higher real estate sales, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what does that do? It drives the price of the land up, right? Mm-hmm. So now, when we drive the price of the land up, the guy that owns a piece of land, you and I own a piece of land, are we happy? Of course we're happy.
Thrilled.
Because we own something. But what is it doing for the guy who doesn't own something?
Putting it further and further out
of his reach. So it's nothing different in terms of all these inflationary prices that you're going to get. Whatever little benefit you're going to get in your pocket for $2.75 an hour is going to disappear. Because at the end of the day, the inflation favors the owner. Okay? It favors the bigger guy, not the little guy. And so I know that I'm going to be castigated and relegated and whatever other word suits your fancy, that I'm somehow against this. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. It's not working in any country in the world. They keep upping it, and you can sit and you can say, all right, in the next 12 years, everyone will be making $150,000. Yeah. And in Venezuela, you'll probably get $1.5 million on your month pay. Doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean anything. What really means something at the end of the day is what you can buy with $1. So I believe that I have seen an increase in my electricity from CUC. Now, I still have to check with the Minister for Home Affairs to confirm. But from the quick cursory review, I think we've probably gone from $900 to like 500 and something bucks. Mm. Now, see, that reduces my cost of living. You just gave me a $400 and something increase, and you didn't up the minimum wage. And you know what? It didn't impact anyone else. Mm. My life is better, and the jerk chicken guy can still go on. In fact, he's making more money too. You see what that does? You see the difference between a minimum wage and lowering the electricity bill? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got 400. The jerk chicken guy got 400. Wow. The AC guys got 4. Everybody's happy, but no minimum wage. Nothing went up. The opposite happens when you talk about the minimum wage. And I'm going to keep saying, you're going to get that kind of nonsense because at the end of the day, as long as you give politicians this nice, sweet, easy stick that they can hold out and fool the masses, because as they say, masses are asses, then at the end of the day, we're not going to make any progress. It requires hard work. And I'm not quite sure what the reason is for CUC giving us this break. I hear what they're saying, but it sounds a little suspicious to me. But either way, forgive me if I'm wrong. I'd like to just say thank you, CUC, for lowering the cost of living, because that's the one that makes the difference. And if we can get renewable energies in place and we can reduce it even further, that's what we need for the country. Then what the government can do is come along and maybe do something to help ensure that businesses can pass those savings on. And then they need to do the same thing with the banks that we've just talked about, where I can perhaps get a mortgage in the United States for 2.5%, and I'm getting it down here for 6.5%, or an additional 4.5, if not more above prime. So that's my rant today. Again, to just remind you, minimum wage taking us nowhere. What we need to do is genuine efforts to reduce the cost of living. And I'm just honestly concerned when I can hear an elected official saying, whatever's going to happen with the economy is going to happen with the economy. No, honestly, I have to do a little bit more research on that one, because when you hear something and I've heard this before.
Yes.
Well, this is one of those moments. I have heard this before.
A deja vu moment.
This is a deja vu moment. I've heard this before. That doesn't matter to me. I'm just going to do what I want to do. To hell with that economy. It'll do whatever it wants to do.
Well,
anyway,
at 51 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, we do have at least 3 comments coming from the WhatsApp line. 2 addressing our previous conversation of CUC, which, of course, continues to tie into our current conversation on minimum wage, and at least 1 comment on minimum wage. Let's hear what the listening audience have to say. First of all, CUC will get what they want and keep their monopoly because many politicians have shares in the company. I bet even off-reg staff also have shares in CUC. By the way, isn't it a conflict of interest for politicians to have shares in the company? Nothing will change as they are happy receiving dividends. We just simply can't win the Cayman consumer. Another writer says, I recall CUC and Charles Farrington, their advisor, saying that the more people who use solar panels, the higher the non-solar people will pay for their diesel-generated power. Well, see, now that comment I believe, because, again, look at your next CUC bill and tell me if you do not see a surcharge for renewable solar energy. It is on the bill, and arguably maybe one of the reasons why CUC is an avid supporter of, a 22.5 megawatt solar farm is they're going to attach their surcharge to that too, just like they're attaching it to the farm in Bodden Town and arguably the solar panels that sit on your roof at home that you're barely getting a whisper out of in the core program. So to my colleague's point, they're laughing all the way to the bank. But to the writer's point, this might very arguably be in line with why as solar grows, so too will the profit margins of CUC. On minimum wage, it says, gentlemen, it is so upsetting to hear that Minister Michael Miles said that we are importing poverty. What a ridiculous statement. Can you help me understand how many Caymanian housekeepers, warehouse workers you can find to work for you? I have an ad running and received no Caymanian applicants, but yet the government approved the work permit with this requirement. How do I commit to this if I can't find a Caymanian to do the job?
But let me supplement what that author is saying. Two of them actually. Just for clarity, I completely understand where the gentleman or the lady is coming from that authored that particular comment. I can't find a helper as a Caymanian. But let me just stress to you, you probably can't find a British helper either. Just think about it. You probably can't find a British helper either, and you probably can't find an American helper either. So just so you know, it's not just the Caymanians, but I get your point. And again, I want to stress, I don't know what he's saying when you talk about importing poverty. We're importing poverty. I made it abundantly clear. I've had at least one person who said, Ellio, I'm making 7 times my pay. Mm-hmm. Making 7 times my pay. And I'm telling you, with the greatest of respect to you as Caymanians right now, I think the average salary, I heard somebody saying, throwing around 60 grand for the year. You tell me which Caymanian is not going to leave here and go to Dubai, go to London, go to America, and arguably sleep under a bridge. Or let's make it nice. Catch up in a room with 5 other Caymanians if they can make $600,000 a year. Tell me which ones.
I don't know, but I'm waiting for that job ad that they, buddy, listen, I don't know about catching up with a whole bunch of people, but I'll catch up with you for
I'm not knocking anyone, but at the end of the day, I have seen it with my own eyes. Let me see. Did I just get it right that you just built a house in your country in the last 5 months? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know.
Remittances.
I don't know at the end of the day what the individual is talking about. To the author who talked about the fact that you have persons on the off-reg board that have shares or whatever, or government members. Listen, if that is indeed the case, this again goes to our conversation yesterday with SPLC, the Standards in Public Life Committee. Okay, it extends beyond 2 ministers sharing $1.6 million, which seriously needs to be looked into. Dangerous precedent being set. At the end of the day, you can't be on the off-reg board having shares in CUC and then making decisions as to whether CUC gets something or not. So if that is the case, I hope the SPLC will be dealing adequately with that as well, because that clearly sounds to me, at the minimum in perception, conflict of interest.
Sure.
And for sure, those notes, those minutes and decisions need to be as transparent as possible. I mean, no one can knock if you had an investment prior to, but you better make sure you declare it, and let's be very transparent with what decisions he or she are making.
Yes. Valid point you made.
But I heard dogs barking this morning, by the way. Actually, I didn't really hear the dogs barking. I was told that dogs were barking. I keep telling people, if they're going to talk about me, Mr. Harris, you got to go to break again?
No. I just want to, well, yes, and I want to save your comments for the 6 o'clock
hour. Okay. Because I just want to say, I want to say something really quick about that. Just to say, if people could just inform me, if you want to say something about me, just give me a shout. Let me know you're going to talk about me, so I can probably actually listen. Mm-hmm. But bottom line of it is that doesn't make any difference. The caravan goes on, and that's where we're going to also touch again on the same topic about the standards in public life.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, the decision that I've heard come back in terms of nothingness from SPLC of the past, to me, that definitely has to be reviewed.
Yes. Well, thinkers talk about issues. Simple people talk about people and other people. And I'm just where I'm going to leave it there. You have a choice in radio programming. You want to listen to fodder. You don't want to have to think about anything you're talking about. You want to be able to eat your popcorn and just have a chuckle while you're listening. By all means, knock yourself out. But if you want to think about the things that, ponder us at home at night, the cost of living, where we're heading with banking fees, where we're heading with cost of living fees, why these issues are important, why the utility bills continually to go up, and why we really won't see many changes either at the consumer front with solar energy or without solar energy. These are the conversations we're having, and they're a bit bigger than individual personalities. I'll just say it as that. And it may not be a cup of tea for everybody, but certainly you have a choice. I just wanted to make the point, Ellio, as you seek to obviously argue against minimum wage as it perhaps being the easy approach versus the more difficult approach of bringing down the cost of living. The ESO did a cost analysis on the minimum wage, and they estimate that the new $8.75 minimum wage will cost the country just over $51 million a year, with $39 million coming from businesses and about $13 million coming from households. The sectors most impacted include household employment, such as domestic helpers and gardeners, administrative and support service, including security guards and janitorial staff, as well as the service industry, such as hairdressers, restaurants, and accommodation establishments. An easy way of saying hotels and motels. These are the people that will be impacted negatively by the increased cost of a minimum wage. But we are 59 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock and have to pause, take a short commercial break. Time to check in once again with our news partner, BBC. But there'll be more Straight Talk next.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's had very constructive and political conversations with President Trump about the resumption of military aid to Kyiv. This includes the purchase of Patriot missile systems, which Ukraine urgently needs to protect itself from intensifying Russian attacks. Mr. Zelensky was speaking during a visit to Italy, from where Sarah Rainsford sent this report.
Ukraine's president was speaking at a big conference here in Rome to discuss his country's recovery and reconstruction after the war, although efforts to negotiate an end to Russia's invasion have stalled. Instead, Ukraine is under heavier drone and missile attack than ever, with Moscow offering no concessions. Asked by the BBC whether he thought Donald Trump's recent criticism of Vladimir Putin was significant from a president who used to criticize him, Volodymyr Zelensky seemed unsure, saying only that he was grateful for the positive signals he saw from Mr. Trump today.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said he's ready to negotiate a permanent end to the war in Gaza, but insisted it must involve the disarmament of Hamas. At the close of his visit to Washington, Mr. Netanyahu said that if that couldn't be achieved through negotiations, Israel would achieve it by force.
We are trying to achieve the release of half of the live and the dead hostages in exchange for a temporary 60-day ceasefire. At the beginning of the ceasefire, we will enter negotiations for a permanent end of the war. In order to achieve this, this must be done according to the minimal conditions that we have set. Hamas lays down its weapons. Gaza will be disarmed.
The UN says it's delivered the first fuel consignment to Gaza in 4 months, but warns it falls short of even a single day's demand. The Office of Humanitarian Affairs said that the 75,000 litres it managed to bring in from Israel were far below the hundreds of thousands of litres needed daily to meet Gaza's humanitarian needs. The leaders of Britain and France have agreed a pilot scheme to return to France some of the migrants who cross the Channel in small boats. In exchange for every migrant returned, Britain will take in an asylum seeker who has not tried to enter the country illegally. Here's our political correspondent, Rob Watson.
It's possible that there will be all sorts of legal challenges to what it is that Keir Starmer and President Macron have agreed today. And, of course, President Macron pointed out this will also need to be agreed with the European Union, who have all sorts of kind of concerns about bilateral deals. Obviously, what President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer hope is that you would begin to deter people from gathering in northern France in the first place and from then making the journey to Britain. Now, of course, whether it works is something we might well be looking out for in the next few months.
Rob Watson with that report. This is World News from the BBC. The Deputy Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has told the United Nations Security Council there are reasonable grounds to believe war crimes are being committed in Sudan's Darfur region. Nazat Shamim Khan said it was hard to find appropriate words to describe the depth of suffering there. Two of Brazil's biggest companies say they're studying the implications of President Trump's latest threatened sanctions. Though the 50% tariffs have been dismissed by some analysts as noise, both the oil giant Petrobras and the plane manufacturer Embraer face possibly significant hurdles to one of their biggest markets. The US Secret Service has suspended 6 agents over the assassination attempt against Donald Trump at a Pennsylvania campaign rally last July. Penalties range from 10 to 42 days of unpaid leave. In a Fox News interview conducted by his daughter-in-law Lara, Mr. Trump said mistakes had been made, including not stationing an agent on the rooftop from where the gunman fired, but that he had confidence in the Secret Service.
They briefed me and I'm satisfied with it. They should have had somebody in the building. That was a mistake. They should have had communications with the local police. They weren't tied in, and they should have been tied in. So there were mistakes made that, shouldn't have happened. And that building was a prime building in terms of what they were trying to do.
The Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, said the agency had taken steps to ensure such an event could never be repeated. More than 30 EU environment and climate ministers have given blood samples to highlight the impact of so-called forever chemicals on human health. Exposure to even low levels of these synthetic substances is linked to cancers, immune deficiency, liver damage and high cholesterol, among other problems. The samples, taken during a meeting in Denmark, will be tested for 13 compounds which persist in the environment and accumulate in the body. That's the latest. BBC News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, Hear Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here, brought to you by your favorite Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris, as we move into our final segment of the evening. Time in studios now 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, and the show wraps up just a little bit before 6:30. Call it 6:29 is when we pull the plug. But the phone lines remain open at 745-2626 is the number. We've heard some concerns during the break that persons are trying to get in but only going to voicemail. I can attest to the fact that I haven't seen any numbers pop up since my good friend, my good Yorkshire friend, called up at the beginning of the program. And during the break, I also tested it by calling the line myself, and my number popped up. So I really don't know what to tell you. But 745-2626 is the number. If you want to join our conversation by lending your voice to it, we would love to hear from you. Likewise, or alternatively, you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp line by dialing 928-2562. And from there, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. You may also text message or iMessage or whatever you want to call it outside of WhatsApp, also to that same number as well, if you want to lend your viewpoints to our ongoing conversation as to CUC and solar panels, the cost of competition. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Minimum wage, is it going to increase or decrease the cost of living? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Whatever you have on your mind on these topics, we want to hear from you. Now, Ellio, at 8 minutes past the hour, now 9 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, I again abruptly interrupted you whilst you were in full swing in your thought. Yeah. So I again hand over to you to finish your thought as you were making in the previous segment.
Yeah. So again, it's easy for ministers and everybody else, and we just pick it up. We hear it here, and then we pick it up.
I hate to do it to you, buddy. But now the phone is ringing.
I'll take a call. I'll take a call.
Good evening, caller. You're on the air. Hello.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you all doing?
Very good, sir. Thank you for your call.
No problem. This is Jordan Rivers here.
Mr. Rivers, how are you?
Good.
Long time no speak.
I know. But don't worry. We'll be back in the program soon.
Terrific.
Don't you worry.
You don't sound too enthusiastic right now. Something's bothering you. What's up?
Yes and no. Kind of, it's a double-edged sword, unfortunately. We as Caymanians have unfortunately been burdened with the cost of minimum wage when it comes to our own advancement in the country, right? To Minister Miles' point now, I will tell you straight and unequivocally, I do support him entirely. He does have a lot of sound points when it comes to the fact that we are importing poverty, because from my understanding of that over years of dealing inside of the tourism and service industry, you will only ever get a certain type of individual that is willing to accept such a low standard of living. And that's what I think he is personally referring to when it comes to that we are importing poverty. What I will say now is that as a person that has worked in the tourism industry for decades, is that we are long overdue for a hike in the minimum wage. The problem is, and Ellio, you touched a lot of amazing points right before the break. So I want to say I think you covered pretty much everything on that. What I would say, though, that you did miss out on, and I will caution this new government for this, is that irrespective of the desire to want to help your people, economics are economics for a reason. They are going to show you a roadmap to how your country is going to go. So even if we just happen to raise the minimum wage line, we are still not tackling the problem of inflation. And I think we can all agree on that what is the biggest driver for inflation in any country is government's involvement in the industry, how much they take out for themselves when it comes to fees, whether it's importation, domestic licensing. So if we are not going to try and find an active way of reducing the cost of living in the country, government needs to strongly consider how much involvement it is going to have when it comes to taking fees from every person in here. What I find is, and I get it, like one of government's biggest drivers and one of the biggest takers of its pie chart is the civil service. And if you're going to constantly expand that, you're going to have to pay. But what we are not seeing is the common person is not receiving a break in this country, and that is the hard part. To your point, Ellio, the single mother that has to hire a helper and pay them $8.75 an hour now, that is a massive increase when it comes to month's end. That's now going to be the deciding factor of whether that single mother can even afford that helper for their child, because they're now going to have to figure out, well, I keep on going to work, I have to pay for my child's daycare, or I have to pay for my child's services, medical, health insurance, the regular cost of living factors. Can I truly afford what it will now be deemed as a luxury more so than a necessity for myself? So there's a lot of factors that we have to take into account. But the biggest driver of any inflation in any country is the government. So I would caution them that if they are going to go through this, which they are, they need to start figuring out how they internally handle all of their own debts and where they're going to now start to collect revenue from outsourcing. And we have a massive, when I say massive, we know it's massive, a massive financial service industry in this country. And we could look to actually starting to require a bit more fees, because the fact of the matter is, the services we offer in this country for persons that come from abroad that want to have Cayman as their headquarters, it offers massive benefits when it comes to tax breaks and financial incentives globally. That's why we are a leader in the financial services industry. But as we all know, everyone has to pitch in and play their part. So I think that if we are going to go this route of raising the minimum wage, in order to keep this system rolling, the common person can no longer bear the brunt of the damage that is going to be caused by the natural inflation.
All right. Well, that's who's going to bear it. The average guy.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that is my caution to this new administration, is that if you're going with this, think of the little guy, because it is not always the big spender that keeps the economy running. They put into here in order to take back out of here. It is the little person that is going to go and service your domestic economy, and if they cannot afford to do it, then we just have a rampant poverty in this country.
Yep, no problem. Thank you very much, Jordan, for your call. Greatly appreciate it, as usual.
Indeed, and we'd certainly hope to take you up on that offer. I won't even call it a threat, but that offer to get back in studio with us, because, again, we enjoyed chatting with you. We did during the campaign trail, and we still do, so don't be a stranger. 745-2626 is the number. 14 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, giving us just over 15 minutes before we have to wrap it up.
I want to give some. I want to round this comment off about importing poverty. I'm not really quite sure exactly who's supposed to be offended by that comment, but let me just make something clear. A lot of the people that are coming here in this particular one, the individuals that send out the general remittance every day at the Western Unions and the MoneyGrams of the world, are coming from countries that are poorer than us. So if you're saying that bringing them here simply as that fact is importing poverty, well, that's one statement. But let's be clear about this. The Cayman Islands right now, just between 75% of this goes out to Jamaica and to the Philippines. We send out approximately $290 million to $300 million a year in remittances through our money services, as in the MoneyGrams and the Western Unions of the world. 75% of that goes to Jamaica and the Philippines. Why do I say that? Let's be clear. What we have done, and it's not only them, because I want to touch the other ones as well. What we are doing is providing these people at the same time with an opportunity, a place to come to make a tremendous amount of money. Clearly much better than what they're making back home, where they wouldn't be coming. And to my friend who likes to say, hey, my friend, he loved them Filipinos. Well, I love everyone. But I'm just here to tell you the truth.
Whoever would say that.
Bottom line is, when a person moves to your country, there's either something pushing them out, and or there's something pulling them, as in there's something much better in the country that they're going to, or things are just so horrible back home that they have to leave. There's normally a little bit of combination of both. But let's be clear. With the greatest of respect, when the average Jamaican is coming here, or the average Filipino, just to use them for a moment, they're coming here, chances are, because the opportunity is better. And we see that reflected in the remittances when $300 million is leaving this economy every year to enrich individuals and somebody else's country. It's nothing different with the other nationalities. If there's a Canadian coming here, if there's an Englishman coming here, a British, whatever, chances are they're coming here because the opportunities here are better. And I'm simply saying you have to find real solutions. You talked about a figure just now about what's going to have to be forked up by businesses.
Yes.
But mention those numbers.
Sure.
Give it to me really quickly.
Yeah, 17.9 million in additional wage costs are expected for small businesses with 10 employees or fewer. The overall cost for a minimum wage will cost the country just over $51 million a year, $39 million in overall costs coming from businesses, and $13 million from households.
Okay. Those are the persons. They are giving you a number of the persons, individuals, or companies, or whatever that's going to have to be spending some additional money to accommodate it. In other words, this is what it's going to cost this particular company when you implement it.
Yes.
But they're not the only ones, ladies and gentlemen, that are going to pay. Because the hotel, how much did you say is coming from hotels?
It didn't stipulate what
okay, it doesn't give you a specific
hotels.
Okay,
no.
So let's just give it.
Restaurants and accommodation establishments was all very broad in which they.
And if we give an aggregate figure and say it's going to increase certain businesses, certain sectors, helpers, our moms and dads, whatever it is, it's going to increase aggregate. Let's say 25, 30, 50 million. It does not end there. Because the average person in business is going to try to recoup that cost. Because chances are they're charging the figures right now that they need in order to survive in terms of their respective households or businesses.
Right.
And they're now going to say, hold on, if my additional bill is now $1 million, I need to recoup $1 million, at least, assuming that they're decent people and don't want to go, let's make two. So assuming they don't want to be too greedy, they're going to at least try to get back what they have just expended. Which means this is where all of us have to pay. That one just paid $10 million, but all of us now have to go to the jerk chicken stand, to the water guy, to the guy who's doing the AC, to the guy who's doing the construction, to the hotels, and the list goes on. Everybody pays. And this is why I'm simply saying, find real solutions. Lower the cost of electricity. So again, thank you. So you see, regardless of what anyone might want to say, respect to the motives, that is lowering cost of living. Tackling the banks and asking them why we have to be raped with a percentage that's over 300-something percentage points against what is already in the United States. That would be a way to lower the cost of living. But you see, nobody can't do that because that would take intestinal fortitude, some cojones, to go and sit down with these banks and say, come on, guys. On how many sides do you want to win? You want to automate your services. You're firing Cayman tellers. You don't want to hire anyone to even talk to human beings anymore. And then on top of that, you're outsourcing. I got to now call Trinidad and Tobago and Bermuda and Bahamas and everywhere else around the world, even Dominica, in order to get financial services because you don't have crap here. And then on top of that, now you're asking for life insurance, dog insurance, home insurance, and everything else. And now you want to rape us with this interest rate. No. They don't. The bottom line is they don't have the balls to do it. They do not have what it takes to sit there and say, no, this is not going to work anymore. And this is why they run around with the political candy to make everybody feel good that I'm going to give you a raise in pay. Oh, that just sounds good. And if you're desperate, I understand. If you're in a tough situation, I understand how good that sounds. But if I have to be the only voice crying in the wilderness, I'm telling you, it doesn't offer any help. All that's going to happen in another couple of years is we'll go to a receptionist down at one of the hotels and they're making $150,000 a month or $150,000 a year. Sounds good. Yeah. Until you learn that the guy in the bank is making $2 million, but bottom line is, what does it cost for a meal? Like some of you go to some of these countries, you're paying $10,000 for a plate of food. This doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And so, again, on this issue about this corruption, like I said, if somebody knows something, they should report it to this PLC, the standards, and what is it? Why are not standards? I got almost weird. Standards Public Life. Whatever. SPLC.
SPL.
I'm going to just call it SPLC. Report it because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be allowed We can't have persons that are supposed to be looking out for your interests that are arguably diverted in terms of their attention. That's why I want to comment on that as well as this minimum wage. But I just want to end with two more things. I want to say really quickly that we need to talk about this issue, about this 1.6 million. It obviously had people barking first thing this morning. And people are not, and I want the public to understand, they're not addressing the issue, you know. They're attacking personalities. It doesn't really bother me. But what I want them to do is address this issue. Address the issue. Don't talk about me. All kind of nonsense and foolishness. I really don't have time to listen. Address the issue. Address the issue of why people are giving a $1.6 million loan to a colleague. And the precedent that we are setting, that any corporation in this country can just get up tomorrow and lend another $1.6 million to a member of parliament. Hey, it's just a bridge loan. It doesn't mean I'm buying him off or anything. No, absolutely doesn't mean that. No, that's what I want you to address, the issue. You see?
But they can't.
Well, I'm just going to preach it. I'm not preaching to them. I'm preaching at the end of the day to hopefully a couple of innocent minds that can be swayed to see the truth. They are not addressing the issue. So you attack personalities. Can't deal with the message, so you attack the messenger. Deal with the issue. And with that, I'll say what my good friend says, the dogs bark, but the caravan must go on. And we will be discussing $1.6 million until the cows come home, until the fat lady sings.
But again, to your point, because it sets a dangerous precedent for a number of reasons, obviously one of which you reached out to, but arguably it also highlights the fact that whilst we have a new chairman of the Standards and Public Life Commission,
that's a mouthful.
You know, it is a mouthful. Standards and Public, SPL. They did not, and I quote, say again, did not raise an alarm. They did not highlight that there was anything wrong, and that should probably be the most surprising.
There's a clear breach in terms.
They're appointed by the same politicians, so maybe keeping their job and lofty position is more important than doing the job.
In terms of the register of interest, and I'm going to publish a little article on my Facebook page when I get home tonight, and I can have some of these same people barking at that one. But I can tell you, the register of interest, the legislation makes it abundantly clear insofar as failure to declare. And one of them declared, the other one did not.
Yep. Quite right.
It is an offense to not declare it. And one of the things is subject to at least $10,000 in fines. How the SPLC, and let's say past SPLC, reach certain these conclusions are baffling. It's befuddling. It's very confusing. We stand to be corrected. Please inform us. I want to try to see if I can do an FOI so I can run through and see what decision was made, how it was made, etc. But I can just tell you, it's an offense.
Sure it is.
And bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, you can't set that kind of a precedent. So I'm going to continue to preach the issue because I can see it has stirred something. It has stirred something, and I'll just keep stirring.
Of course.
Because at the end of the day, it needs to be fixed. Not for me. I can sleep. But for the average person.
Goes, you throw a rock into a pig pen, the one that squeals.
But you wouldn't be calling anyone a pig now, would you?
Well, no, heaven forbid.
Okay, there you go.
I was just quoting an old
adage.
Saying, an old adage.
Right.
You know, don't take it personal. I mean, heaven forbid. We wouldn't want that to happen now, would we?
So bottom line is, it is something that we're going to continue to discuss. Whatever it is, Ellio Solomon on Facebook. I'm going to post it there, and our website launches very quickly. And we're going to be posting some of these same articles on there as well. You have your opportunity to read. Again, not just spewing the news, but actually giving you something behind the news, discussing it, educating and enlightening and elevating ourselves insofar as these issues that are affecting all of us. And hopefully you'll continue to read and support it. I appreciate that some people may not want to like it.
Indeed.
They might want to send the wrong message to the government.
That's all right.
Don't want you to think that I'm against you, Mr. Government. But we're just giving you the facts, ladies and gentlemen. So at any point in time, our phone lines are open. The studio is here. If you have other facts, I want you to come and tell us. Some sit in the studio, call the phone lines, and address us on the issues. We don't have time to talk about who has the longest tail and the biggest lips and the biggest eyes. No, we don't have time for all that. We don't have time for all that. That is nonsense. That is the sort of culture that's destroying Cayman. It's not taking us anywhere. What we should be doing is having an intellectual discussion that once you've had it, you can go home tonight and say, I think that I'm a better person right now. I think I've actually learned something. Like even when the start of the show, as jovial as it may be, I now know the difference between saying I'm British versus I'm English.
Right.
We're about learning something and advancing ourselves. And when you can listen to somebody spew garbage for 2, 3, 4 hours, and you haven't really learned anything, then there's a problem. Yeah. As my colleague says, I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing.
Yeah, right.
Is Jerry Springer still with us?
Yeah,
or he's passed away?
I don't know. He probably died.
Okay.
You know, he died of boredom. Just rounding off this minimum wage discussion and reverting back to perhaps the committee that proposed it and started it. I call him the Honorable Lemuel Hurlston. I like him. He's a good guy. I have nothing but respect for him. He was the chairman of the Minimum Wage Committee. He also wrote a great book, by the way. I've read it. It's fantastic. But Lemuel Hurlston, chairman of the Minimum Wage Committee, said that when it was conducting its minimum wage review and hosting its public consultation, they held 37 meetings, reviewed government data, and canvassed the public, government agencies, and the private sector. So they were thorough in their approach. He's added that most households had backed to $10 an hour minimum wage, but businesses had wanted a figure of no more than $9. Hurlston said that the final figure that was proposed represented, and I quote, a reasonable compromise, which would be reviewed every 2 years and linked to inflation without the need to convene a full committee. Now, that last sentence is what I want to highlight, particularly if you, take my colleague's viewpoint on this. If you think $8.75 is harsh and certainly going to have significant ramifications, consider this. Every 2 years, as inflation rises, so too is the minimum wage expected to rise. Will the government put a cap on it? Again, we don't know, but it is where it is for the president.
I want to know what houses are being surveyed. That's the one I want to know.
We're out of time, but you want to know? Tune in tomorrow. We'll explore that answer together. Good night, Kim-Ann.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo 103.1. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
Be prepared. You should have a grab-and-go survival kit that includes your ID, cash, and other vital documents in case you